Welcome, this is the Drupal usability meeting for October 27th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating. And also present are Aaron McHale, Hoffer Schall, Ralph Kohler, Simo Helston, and Thomas Howell. Thank you all for coming. I guess the issue for today's meeting, just for the sake of the recording, is 339-5398. I want to start off with a quick update on this issue that we talked about last week, possibly 2 weeks ago, use modals in field creation flow. And that is issue 338-6762. And in the last week, there's been a lot of work on this issue, mostly to fix bugs in the current implementation and to get the automated tests to pass. I know that Simo added a comment and Christina agreed with that. It's kind of hard to find them with all the other comments. I guess, Simo, your suggestion was that at least in some cases, the radio buttons should be arranged vertically rather than in a grid.
Yeah, I think in every case. So I used reference. I was referencing US web design system. They have different options for radio buttons, and I don't like having radio buttons inside that kind of boxes, but it's in US web design system, and so I think they have done a bit of research there. So it's kind of I would expect it works in some cases. And but they have a rule that it should always be vertical, so I was referencing that as a rule.
Okay. So I guess Christina partially agreed with that. I think I saw a comment from her. Here it is. Although I guess she's the one who suggested, especially when there aren't very many items. Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks, and sorry, I'm in a noisy place at the moment, so I might not talk very much. But I would also, in addition to them being vertical, I would like to see them as not radio buttons. Because I think that was something that we mentioned before there. Having them as just links is maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit, could be a little bit better for what we're trying to do here.
Okay, your audio is choppy, so I think basically you're saying that instead of using radio buttons, we should use links, and then the rules for radio buttons don't apply. I'm a little afraid that at this point, now that tests are passing and bugs have been worked out, there's a chance it will be committed. And unless we can find someone to implement other suggestions, I'm not sure that any additional work is going to be done on this issue. The good news is that our main complaint about the previous issue, combining the field storage and field instance forms. No, I'm sorry, not that one. The previous issue was grouping the fields into field groups. Our main complaint about that is that when you, maybe I'll demonstrate, structure, content types, manage fields. So this now opens in a modal. Previously, it opened in a regular window. And when you clicked on something that had options, it showed up below the grid.
Benji, the issue is still shown on the video.
Issues, really?
Yeah.
Let me
stop. Shown on the side.
Let me stop the screen share and then start again. Aaron, your hand is still up. Is that because you have something new you want to say, or is that left over?
Sorry, that was a leftover hand.
Okay, so now do you see my admin screen?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for letting me know. So as I was saying previously, when you chose one of these field groups, the list of fields would show up below the grid, possibly below the bottom of the screen. And that has been fixed by the modal workflow. We now get a new modal window with the choices here. And it's now vertical, so maybe someone has addressed that feedback. So it seems to me that it's better than it was. And I'm sure there's still room for improvement. That's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, Ralph.
Just one brief addition, and it's also mentioned in comment number 20. One general problem with the modal dialog in general for screen reader users, I've linked there to an overall issue, and it definitely applies to that issue as well. So basically all the elements from behind the modal are not excluded from the accessibility object model, so they are announced as well and available for, in particular with the rotor.
Right. So you opened a new issue to address that, and I really think it deserves its own issue. With an open dialogue, modal make only elements within the modal available to screen readers, and that's issue 3395355. Just as a matter of controlling issue scope, I think that should have its own issue and not necessarily block the work going on. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay, or is the audio still choppy?
Much better.
Oh, good. Yeah, just going to say that I think, to be fair, I think the radio button thing, I would be happy to leave to maybe a follow-up issue to sort of explore, even if, if that's a good idea, because certainly what we have now is an improvement. And to the point about the issue that Ralph just raised, what is interesting is now in the latest browsers, we have a sort of native dialogue element in HTML. So it might be that it would be worth testing with the native dialogue if that's still a problem, because I know there is a desire to eventually move to that. So that would be something, if you haven't tested the native browser dialogue, if that's something that could address that issue.
Can you walk me through seeing that in the page markup?
So I don't think, because Drupal doesn't use them yet, I don't think we can use them. We can see it, but if you were to go to something like the Mozilla site or something like that, they probably have examples of the new sort of native HTML dialogues.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah, we don't have them in core yet, I think.
So that might be an appropriate comment on this issue. That maybe we should.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's already included in that issue. That issue in the issue summary links. The short-term fix would be going with the ARIA modal attribute, and the long-term fix would be referring to the add native dialog elements to eventually deprecate the jQuery UI one. And there, in the accessibility office hour, the consensus was for use for the dialog element if the support is broad enough and in combination with the ARIA modal. And as Ofer said in the meeting, only the edge cases fixed with some JavaScript and then fade that out as soon as browser support gets better by the time.
Oh, here, and I see there's already a related issue for the dialogue.
Yep.
element.
Yeah, that might have some screenshots in it, possibly, or resources. But no, that sounds great. So I'm glad you've already sort of checked that, Ralph. So yeah, definitely, if we can ultimately say that's the ultimate goal, then yeah, sounds good.
But for the short term, it's definitely the role dialogue in combination with ARIA modal good enough.
This one, add a native dialogue element to eventually deprecate the jQuery UI one. It's issue 2158943. Who opened this? Nod, and marked it critical. And 10 years ago. Yes. Okay, anything else to say on this collection of issues?
Well, with the like Laura said that they're trying to get rid of that jQuery from the modals, and I also filed one issue against that modal because of the breakpoints, like cutting off information in certain sizes. But he said that it's like they are trying to fix that by replacing the modal thing.
Okay, Ralph?
And just one question in regards of the field creation flow. In regards of the back buttons, should that also move to a follow-up issue? Because they are still, I don't know what the label was they're using currently. I get and the change field type. The change
Yes.
field type button. So should that move to a follow-up? Probably.
I'm not sure we have much choice there. I'd like to get it fixed on the issue, but we'll see what happens. And it's certainly not a disaster if it gets moved to a follow-up.
And same goes for the steps in the title to provide some context.
Yes. All of that is feedback that we provided last time we looked at this. Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to see that they're going to follow, and also because I think it would be good if we could define some kind of common standard or pattern for what what the appropriate terms are to use in it in some multi-step modal form like this. So I think that a sort of follow-up issue is a good choice. Particularly if we want to get this, get things committed, keep moving forward in the spirit of all of this. The only other thing I would add is that I took most of this week off after Drupal just to kind of relax and recharge, and so I haven't actually yet created the issues from a couple of weeks ago that I said I would. So those are still to come, but I'll put a note in the channel once those are done. Hopefully, actually later this afternoon or this weekend, I'll have time to create those.
Okay, thanks. Your audio is graded a bit. Okay, so let's stop talking about that. And I think I suggested next we go to Simo's issue. Are you ready to share your screen, or shall I?
If you have it ready, you can do it also. I have it in local, so it's if you have it have the patch or that branch somewhere where others can access.
No, I don't have the patch available.
Okay, just a minute.
Okay. Oh, and I forgot to paste this into the Zoom chat, but I'll give you the link to the site I've been looking at, and it has the issue we've been discussing is what's currently applied on this copy. And I haven't done a very good job of keeping up with the meeting chat, but I think all of those comments got mentioned. Oh, and Mulgol joined the meeting. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Benji. Hello, everyone.
What I right, and in the chat, Ralph suggests adding the issue tag that it needs follow-up. And I think that's a good idea.
So the next issue is issue number 339. Oh no, this is not the correct one, sorry. This is the meeting for today. And the link is here. So the issue is number 3325551. Add disable image resize setting to image fields. So the current behavior of the image field, which has set maximum image resolution, which means image dimensions in pixels, is that the image, if the image is larger than the maximum dimensions, it will be resized to those dimensions. And the proposed change is that there will be a setting to allow the user, when defining the field settings, can use checkbox to disable that image resizing, and after that checkbox is set, then if image is larger than the maximum dimensions, then the image will be rejected. So if that disable image resize checkbox is checked, then the behavior will be the same with minimum image resolution. And yeah, so that's basically the thing. Very simple change to the current default behavior, or allowing to change the default behavior. Any questions on that? Is the issue clear?
Makes sense to me. Anyone else? Thumbs up from Thomas. All right, is the checkbox the right user interface element for this?
I think it's, and also the checkbox only appears if there are dimensions set on that maximum image resolution. Yeah, I think checkbox is good because it's disabling something. We could also use a toggle, but we don't really have toggles in Claro. So it's kind of so from a kind of a physical world connection, a toggle would be nice, but checkbox is also
Okay,
good for this one.
Thomas, what's your idea?
It's a question more than anything. So image resizes, if it's larger than the maximum, why wouldn't it resize if something was smaller than the maximum? Is it not possible, or this question?
I think this is something that usually resizing upwards causes a lot more problems than resizing downwards. But this it's also another question. But I think I would hope, like for me, usually for sites I do, the best action would be to have default as reject, and possibility to configure to allow resize for both fields. But I think this one is something that currently the current behavior is that it manipulates the image that is uploaded, and then this issue is to allow to prevent that. So this is a single solution. It would be okay to have both options. I think it's the same kind of thing for also minimum image resolution, but with minimum image resolution, that behavior is already default.
Okay, first of all, Simo, I just noticed how many tabs you have open. That's incredible. Thomas, does that answer your question?
It does, but based upon that answer, and I do agree with it, I might suggest that we change some of the wording to make it to move maximum into, I guess, the title of the checkbox rather than forcing people to read through the helper text.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should change a lot of the text here. And
Okay.
Also, it was suggested to have separate issue for changing the term resolution.
I think Aaron was next.
Thanks. Yeah, what I'm thinking is actually, so Simo, could you give me the other screenshot, please? On with the checkbox.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Could you
Show
bring
us the other
screenshot up?
screenshot.
Yeah.
So this is the current version.
The one with the checkbox. If you could bring up that screenshot. Are you able to, you make the image bigger? You open the image in another tab.
We still see that you're on the issue. Maybe this is the same problem I had earlier, that Zoom didn't switch to the other tab. Are you currently looking at the screenshot, Simo?
Yeah, just a moment. I'll try to open that.
I'm hoping other people will voice their opinions first, but when I asked whether the checkbox was the right user interface element, I had an alternative in mind.
Yeah, so I guess while we wait, Simo if he's able to bring the screenshot up. What I was going to say is basically the labeling right now is disabling something. So if you check the checkbox, it disables the thing. I'm thinking if we invert that so that the checkbox is on by default, and by turning it on, you enable this feature. I think that would make a little bit more sense. Even if that's now the default behavior, that's probably going to require like a little bit more work, like an update hoop to update all existing fields to ensure that setting is turned on. But I think it would be a slightly, because right now we've basically got like a double negative going on where you've got the checkbox like disable the thing. And then we can also shorten the description text so we don't need the word disable in the description text.
Simo, why don't you let me share my screen instead? Because you
Okay.
I don't know if it's Zoom or the fact that you have so many tabs open, but that might be easier. Thank you. There we go. So you all see the issue?
Yes.
And now I'm switching to the screenshot. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So Aaron, did you already have your say or do you have more?
No, I think it's just basically saying like, yeah, if we change the checkbox so it's basically like enable image resizing, and you check the checkbox to enable it. I think that would just be slightly easier to work with than right now where it's like if you check the checkbox, you're disabling something. It's kind of like a double negative.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a good point. And Ralph, what's your comment?
In regards of Aaron's suggestion, then the checkbox wouldn't be some sort of progressive disclosure anymore, but you would have to show it all the time. Otherwise, it might be confusing. And one other comment I would to suggest is for the error message. There I would add the reason why the error message happens, so that the image resize is disabled. That isn't currently written there. Where's the
Okay, let's hold off discussion of the error message. We haven't looked at that yet. Offer has to leave. Thanks for joining. So can you say again what your suggestion was for this form?
In that context, I was just referring to Aaron's suggestion, and then at the moment, if no value is entered in the maximum image resolution fields,
yes.
then the checkbox is hidden,
Right.
and that making the checkbox auto enabled per default would be then having it hidden would be problematic, and that way you would have to change the whole behavior behind that as well.
I'm not sure why you say that. If the checkbox is enabled by default, then it can't be hidden. Is that what you're saying?
Once yeah, it would be necessary to show it all the time, I think, in that case.
Is that a technical restriction or a usability restriction? It seems to me that it's possible to have enabled checkboxes that are hidden by default. Simo?
This is another thing. It's about if checkbox is the best one. So I'm thinking it would take more space from the screen, but another option would be to have a radio button where user chooses between resize and reject.
Yeah, that was my thought. Rather than a help text that says what the alternative is at the end of the message, it makes more sense to me to have two radio buttons and use the labels on the radio buttons. Aaron's giving a thumbs up, and so is Thomas. So we could have some text like, if the image is larger than the maximum, then radio button 1, resize the image, radio button 2, reject the image. Exact wording we can work out. Aaron, is your hand still up or again up?
I'm sorry, it was left hand. Zoom on mobile really needs to be clear when your hand's still up.
Okay. So I got a couple of thumbs up as I was talking. So I guess people like that idea. Shall we make that recommendation?
Yeah, I think it would be. That would then we kind of should we allow the default to be resizing. That still needs to be saved to the fields, I think. So it still needs, it would need this update.
Yeah. So for existing sites, I guess for existing sites, we'd have to make the default not change the current behavior. It's possible that we could make the alternative the default for newly added fields. And that would possibly be a bad idea because people wouldn't expect it, and possibly be a good idea because we think it's the better default. If we do that, then I think we'd have to target a minor version for this. It's possible that just adding a new option would be allowed in a patch release.
It kind of seems like more of an implementation thing, to be honest. Like, I think the current approach, we definitely don't want to break existing sites. So yeah, it needs to be the default. But going forward, like that could even be a follow-up issue, to be honest. Like I think right now the default on all sites is that you get this resizing behavior. To me, it doesn't, unless someone makes a strong case as to why that shouldn't be continued the default, then I feel like it's fine to keep it that way. But again, like maybe that's something that you work on the issue itself rather than on this call.
Okay, and Thomas
The-
agreed,
the-
I think too.
Yeah, the use case for when resizing is a really bad idea if you have like 2 pixels too large image and the user doesn't notice and it gets reduced into certain percentage of like JPEG, like it loses quality because of it has a couple of pixels too much. So in that case, it would make sense to have kind of a notification that this is too big, and then the user could just crop it. So there are cases where automatic resizing could cause some issues for the content.
Right, and that's the whole point for the issue. But while adding the new option, we have to avoid changing the behavior on current sites. So let's.
Sorry, I just gonna say I just have to drop off now. But yeah, yeah, it's good to talk through these things. Yeah, I agree the radio button is a good approach, but also like it means potentially Drupal modules could add additional like resizing strategies in the future. So sounds like a good plan. Thanks for doing.
Okay, thanks. So I think Ralph wanted to look at the other screenshots on the issue. So if resizing is enabled and gets applied, you get a status message. The image was resized to fit within the maximum allowed dimensions of 10 by 10 pixels. The new dimensions of the resized image are 10 by 9 pixels. And then the error message, if we don't allow resizing, the specified file, banner_app.png, could not be uploaded. And then as a bullet point, the image is too large. The maximum dimensions are 10 by 10 pixels, and the image size is 380 by 360 pixels. And then the form element for uploading the file is highlighted as standard for an error. Ralph, is this what you wanted to bring up?
Yes. I just am missing the detail that the image resize functionality is currently disabled, and that is the reason that the error message comes up. So the person uploading gets also the clue why it's too large and where the person might look to change things. And because perhaps it could be misconfigured. It's also an option.
I think this would happen mostly to users who are not allowed to configure fields, so it might be confusing to have it as a default error message.
Right, I guess we have to consider both use cases. The site maintained by a single person who does both the configuration and the content editing, and is a more complex site with more people where one person has permission to configure and a different person or many people have content editing. So if you're not allowed to change configuration, then I don't think it makes sense to talk about configuration. It's kind of complicated, but I guess we could show different error messages depending on whether people have the permission. Or we could make a minor change to the error message, like the configured maximum dimensions.
Yeah.
And that would not be too confusing for someone without permission to change it, and would be a hint to a person who does have permission. I get a couple of thumbs up. Do we need that first sentence, the image is too large, or should we just have the longer sentence?
I like having it like short, so that it's immediately obvious that what is the issue, and so the user doesn't need to read the details to understand what's going on.
Okay. So, Timo, Ralph, would one or both of you like to leave a comment on this issue? You're muted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can do that.
Great, thank you. And we still have almost 20 minutes left. So, Ralph, do you want to lead the discussion at this point? Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, 1 second.
Which issue are you going to talk about? The display modes or the field labels?
The display modes.
Okay, so I'll at least bring up the issue. Let me know when you want me to release the screen share.
Oh, you already okay. Yeah, you can release.
Okay.
Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Okay. We are looking at issue number 2721727. Allow a user to add display modes from respective field UIs. That is the second issue out of 2. And before that, a few other changes already went in that are also in the scope of that display modes page. And I wanted to take a look at a whole at that. And there are a few directly visible problems there and changes as well. As you can see, we have here the content. And if you move down, you see the width of the different columns differs. And you also notice another new change is that all those changes are not the scope of the issue. We'll take a look after that, but it's necessary to take a look at those as well. As you can see, you have the add view mode for content, then you have the add view mode for content block, and so forth. And also the width of the description field, just to demonstrate, is around 640 characters. And another change that got in is basically you're able to enable a view mode for certain content types. Those are the changes. And if we go now to the content type, article, manage fields, and go to manage.
Actually, can I ask you to pause for just a second?
Yes.
So I'm looking on my site and the inconsistent column widths is already
Oh,
a problem there. So that's not a new problem.
okay.
Go ahead.
And if we go now down there, we have now a add new view mode link at the bottom. If we click that, test, I'm being creative now, and then you're able to add a description, a description for the test, and now you're able to select the view, and the description says this view mode will still be available for the rest of the content types if not checked here, but will not be enabled by default. And if we save, oh, then we get that. Oh, I forgot. 1 second, I do another round. ABC, just to demonstrate it. It's a bit cumbersome, but to demonstrate the size of the status message when more than 10 or 12 content types are checked in place. Then, yeah, that's basically the changes. Any questions?
So first of all, I guess I'm using the current 11.x. So maybe those inconsistent column sizes were added by the recent issue, the part that you said was had already gone in. I think that this makes the view modes page much more useful than it used to be. I think that if you're configuring the display mode for a content type, there's a link to this page.
No. Where should that link be?
Add new view mode.
That you mean, okay.
And I guess before, or these related issues, that was a normal link going to the main page, and I always thought that was rather cumbersome. I like having this modal pop up, which I guess is the point of the new issue. So the modal, so if you go to the view modes page and then click add view mode for content, that the previous issue implemented that as modal. And what this issue is doing is also bringing in the modal workflow
On the content.
right. I like that. Other opinions? And are there things that we can do to make it better?
Actually, are some of those required? Because Yeah, none of those are not required here.
None of the fields in the current modal form.
Yeah,
Yeah, presumably the name is a required field and should be marked as such. It's funny, we've seen the same thing in other modal forms. In fact, Ralph, can you submit the form without putting in the name field? Okay, that's better than the behavior oh no. Okay, this is the same form outside the modal context.
Yep.
That seems like a bug to me. We should get the error message within the modal rather than going to a regular page, having the same form as the modal.
also it doesn't show machine readable name at all here. Sometimes it displays it after the error message, but here not even then.
Right, and I think we had the same comment when we were looking at the new field form 1 or 2 weeks ago. And I think that this is pointing to an architectural problem that Drupal has a standard way of building a multi-step form. It seems that Drupal does not have a standard way of showing that multi-step form in a modal workflow. And I think that's what we need. Otherwise, we're going to run into these common problems every time a modal workflow is introduced. So that's really an architecture problem, not a usability problem, but it creates usability problems.
Yeah. Would have 1 or 2 more observations I've made.
Go ahead.
Aside the alignment issues, I wasn't aware that it's already inconsistent before. Then it probably justifies a separate issue. But one detail, I wonder why add view mode for content button within basically the rows of content shouldn't be placed outside. So basically you have here the label, you might perhaps place the add button over here in a row. That way you wouldn't have to move the cursor and would be a sort of separation of concerns. But again, on the other hand, on top, you already have the overall button. It would be 1 more click, but still you would be able to get in there. So I'm not completely sure if the button would make sense. And on the other hand, if you are on a content type, display underneath, in here, it's called view mode. On top, it's called display mode. And would it make sense to name it consistently? And on the other hand, again, the same like on the other page, having the add button at the bottom instead of right before on top might be an idea And one detail is I consider that description underneath hard to read. This view mode will still be available for the rest of the content type. If for the rest of the content type, if not checked here, but it will not be enabled by default. That makes my head spin.
Go ahead, Thomas.
I find it a little bit confusing that from this page, you go to this modal and it isn't selecting this page content type automatically. Like I would have assumed that it would contextually assume I'm on this page. The reason I'm adding a new content view mode would be for this page. And if I want others to add them, it just is very strange that it's going to the generic form rather than something that's contextually aware.
That's a great point, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be too hard to implement.
And one other small detail, if you add a new view mode, then the field set is is collapsed instead of open. So that way you're not able to make small adjustments, additional ones necessary. And or is it necessary? Oh no, forget it. Sorry, it doesn't make sense. But yeah, I agree to Thomas.
Go ahead, Thomas.
I wanted to also say that I agreed with what Ralph had been saying. I'm trying to remember the specifics of it, but I find that whenever possible, language should match. So calling it display modes and then having it view mode, that's very like it's confusing to me because view mode as language is already very Drupalistic, or it's a Drupalism. And so I question, well, is that the same thing? Like, is it display mode, a view mode? And so it should be, we should really emphasize that in all instances, all of the pages, we should be using the same language if possible. So within the same page as well as between pages.
Yeah, I completely agree, but I think that's an existing problem, so probably shouldn't be part of this issue just for scope control. But I always have trouble remembering. I know that there are 3 different terms: form mode, view mode, and display modes. And one of those is the parent of the other 2. But I can't remember whether display mode is the parent or view mode is the parent. But in fact, if you look in the admin menu, you'll see which way it goes. And yeah, it's an obvious inconsistency that we should fix. But again, it's an existing problem. I think, Ralph, it's really good of you to have a dozen or so display modes. Looking at the standard profile, I see only 2 or 3. And it really makes the testing more robust when you consider that sort of case where there are lots of something and not just 3. One little improvement, well, I shouldn't say little because maybe it would be hard to implement. But one thing that would be nice when you do have a dozen things here is if you could shift click on one of the check boxes and select a range. That's the way selection works in Gmail. And that's probably, if that's hard, then it's out of scope for this issue, but it might deserve its own issue. But go ahead, Ralph.
One detail, but I'm not sure if it's really an issue, but the only problem I see, but it could be just I'm not used to it yet. But if you take a look here, and you have several content types, several display modes, view modes, and so forth. One worry I have to have some sort of overview if someone has a really sophisticated setup with not everything selected, but dedicated, and the naming isn't proper and consistent, then it might be difficult to select the correct and set up the correct display modes and content modes and some sort of overview. It might be bike shedding, but it's just a feeling when using that feature that always was in the background, that I was missing some sort of feeling of control that way. It felt cumbersome to go into each single view mode or each content type to get an idea what is selected and what not. And yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm afraid looking at the clock, I have to cut off the discussion now. So I have no idea how to address that issue, but
yeah. Just
maybe.
one brief last question regards of the comment. What do you think about the position of the add view modes button as well as on the add link on the content type, everyone? Is the position okay, or is it discussed worthy to move it somewhere else?
I think it's not all that useful. I think, as you said, it's just one more click to go to the button at the top. And I think it's confusing to have it styled differently from the button at the top. Or it's actually a link at the top.
So you mean removing those underneath?
Yeah, I'm in favor of removing those, but probably needs more discussion.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's already there from the previous issue.
Yeah.
Or
okay. Stop it.
okay, we're a couple of minutes over. Thanks all for coming. And Ralph, you'll post a comment on that issue?
Yeah, I'll leave a comment.
Great, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.